Welcome back to the last lecture of new content. Today we're going to talk about 3 A's: altruism, aggression, and we're going to end with attraction. Again, thank you guys. You're doing great last week, and I appreciate all the hard work that you did this week, and I'm excited what's in store. We're going to do some fun things to get us ready for the AP exam. All right, let's start with altruism, the first A. Altruism is the unselfish regard for the welfare of others. So basically, that is just helping people, right? If you are an altruistic person, you're a person who likes to help people. Why do social psychologists study altruism? What happened in 1964, there was a woman named Kitty Genovese, and she was murdered on the streets of New York City. The New York Times reported the next day, this was the headline, that 37 people watched this woman be attacked and lay dying in her lobby of her apartment complex, and nobody called the police. That was the headline, and it shocked the world. We have since learned that perhaps that was a little bit of fake news, that people did try to call 911 and help her. But that is the headline, and that really spurred this case of Kitty Genovese, really spurred on this study of altruism. How do people help people? When do they help people? Why do they help people? And why do they not help people? So I am providing a link in the assignment to a video about the Kitty Genovese case, and the researchers who really did a lot of the research on what's called the bystander effect, and that is Bibb and Latane. So when you watch the video, you'll see a little synopsis of the Kitty Genovese case, and then you're going to see 2 examples of experiments that Bibb and Latane did in their study of the bystander effect. And the Kitty Genovese, the fake news Kitty Genovese, is that of the most famous illustration of the bystander effect. So what is the bystander effect? The bystander effect is the tendency for any given bystander, so anybody viewing the thing that needs help, right, will be less likely to help, to give aid, if other bystanders are present. So basically what this says, if you are in a crowd of people, or there are other people around, or you know that other people are in the building, you are going to be less likely to help someone. If you were all alone, you would be more likely to help somebody because you feel responsible. Okay, so the bystander effect illustrates this diffusion of responsibility. When we're all alone, we feel responsible to help. If there's other people around, we're like, well, those people can help, right? Why does it have to be me? They're perfectly able to help too, and we don't feel that weight of responsibility to give aid. Bystander effect is a big idea, a big concept in social psychology, and I would have expected it to be on the AP exam multiple choice section. So I do want you to take some time to think about that and watch the video. All right, when are the odds of helping the greatest? The odds of helping are the greatest when, well, we have to notice the help, right? We have to see somebody needing help. If you remember, when we talked about sense and perception, we have what's called selective attention. We could be walking down the road thinking in our heads of the appointment we have to get to or the place we have to be, and we could totally miss the person on the side of the road laying down and needing help. Okay, we have to be paying attention. We have to notice. Okay, remember, there's all this stimuli that's coming at us all the time. If we don't have that notice, we don't have the attention to it, then how can we help? The person appears to need help. The person appears to deserve help. And you can think about that when you go around and see some people needing help on the streets. Sometimes we think, well, they got themselves in that position, or they're a drug addict. They got themselves there. A little bit of victim blaming, and we don't feel like they're deserving of help. The person is similar to us. We're more likely to help people that are like us in some manner. That could be our age, that could be our gender, that could be our race or culture, that could be our religion. The person is a woman. We're more likely to help women. We have just observed someone being helpful. So we can think about the social learning theory and Albert Bandura modeling. We learn by watching and then imitating. If we've seen somebody give help, we are more likely then to copy them and give help as well. Other reasons why we might help. There's one concept called the social exchange theory. And the social exchange theory is a cost-benefit analysis. So what we would do is when faced with giving need or giving aid or giving money or giving something, we will say, okay, well, what are the costs and what are the benefits? And if the benefits outweigh the costs, then we will give aid. We will give help. So let's take giving blood, for example. What are the costs of giving blood? Well, needles, okay? Needles, lightheadedness, the time, you have to fill out the paperwork, okay? Those are all costs of giving blood. What are the benefits of giving blood? Well, you're helping people. You might have a relative in the hospital who is in need of blood, okay? And so then you will kind of weigh them, all right? There's a low blood supply. People are dying in hospitals. Oh, the needles. And if the benefits outweigh the costs, then you will give blood. Another concept is called the social reciprocity norm. We learned about the norm of reciprocity when we talked about persuasion techniques. Okay, if somebody gives help to you, you are more likely then to give help to them. So for example, to illustrate the social reciprocity norm, when I had Dawson, when I gave birth to Dawson, a lot of my friends, they did a little Sign Up Genius and they brought me a meal. Okay, so for a few weeks, we didn't have to cook. People brought us meals to help us out. I was a new mom, we were a new family, it was very overwhelming. So fast forward, now my friends have babies. What do? Well, I return the favor, right? So I do an altruistic act. I am kind to them. I help them out by bringing them a meal after they've had their first child. So those are some reasons why we help. Why we wouldn't help is that diffusion of responsibility, that bystander effect. We don't feel the responsibility to help, and so then we do not. All right, going on to the second A, aggression. Aggression is any physical or verbal behavior intended to harm someone physically or emotionally, right? So we could punch and physically hurt, or we could say some mean words and we could emotionally hurt. Both are what aggression is talking about. There are two types of aggression we're going to talk about. We have instrumental aggression and we have hostile aggression. Instrumental aggression is when you do an aggressive act to secure a particular end. So basically what you're doing is you're using your aggressive act as a tool. You're using your aggression as a tool to get something that you want or something that you desire. So for instance, we'll go back to preschool. We got little Bobby and little Carol. They're playing in the sandbox. And Bobby happens to notice that Carol has a cool looking truck. And he really wants that truck. And so he toddles all on over to Carol. He punches little Carol and he takes her truck. That is an example of instrumental aggression, right? He used that physical act. He used the little punch, that aggression, to obtain something he wanted. He wanted the truck. So he used the aggression as a tool to get what he wanted. That's instrumental aggression. And then there's hostile aggression. Hostile aggression, there is no purpose. It is just aggression. It is being mean because you're mad or you're angry or you're just hurt, okay? So, back to the sandbox. Bobby just doesn't like Carol. So Bobby goes over there and punches Carol. Doesn't have anything to do with the truck. He's just angry. He's just mad. He just doesn't like her. And so he just hits her. And that would be hostile aggression. Now, aggression, we can do a nature versus nurture sort of argument about. Remember, nature versus nurture was a theme throughout the whole course. We've talked about it many times. The nature side of any argument, you would focus on the body, our body chemistry, our hormones, our neurotransmitters, our genetics. You might look at chromosomes, brain parts, that sort of thing. The nurture side of an argument, you're going to look at environmental factors. So it might be learning. It might be mom and dad and how they raised us, those sort of things, situations we're in. All right, so the nature side of the aggression debate, we have chromosomes. We know that the Y chromosome is linked with aggression. And we know that testosterone, which is a hormone we learned about in Unit 2 a long time ago at the beginning of the year, that testosterone also is linked with aggression. So if you remember when we did the speed dating with the hormones, testosterone, too much testosterone, elevated levels of that hormone caused aggression. And that's what we said, well, that's where steroids bring in aggression. It's called roid rage. So if you remember that little discussion we had. Brain parts, we've got the amygdala, right? Anger, fear, and aggression as part of the limbic system. And we also have the frontal lobes. So the frontal lobes, not only do they deal with decision making, remember the frontal lobe is the prefrontal cortex right here. Not only does it deal with decision making, but also impulse control. So if you can't help yourself, right, by being aggressive towards other people, you might have some sort of impulse control issue, and maybe there's something amiss with your frontal lobe. And then we have the nurture side of the debate. The nurture side of the debate, remember, we're looking at environmental factors, and there is a principle called the frustration-aggression principle. The frustration-aggression principle says that frustration from situations creates anger, and that anger can spark aggression. So with the frustration-aggression principle, we're not focusing on people that make us mad, but situations. If we're in these certain situations, or if these things are going on in our environment, we get frustrated, and then that frustration can lead to anger, and that anger can lead to aggression. So what are some sort of situations that get you frustrated? It could be heat. A lot of people get really cranky in the heat. It could be crowds. Some people cannot handle crowds, and so they get very frustrated. It could be smells. Cigarette smoke gets people really irritated. Body odor. Being around somebody with really bad body odor could get somebody very frustrated. If you're hungry, right? We've all heard hangry. I know the Duncans suffer from hangriness. If we don't eat on our regular schedule, we all get a little cranky, and it tends to lead to arguments. Slow internet connections, or Teams, or virtual school, right? There was a lot of frustration in my household this past week of virtual school, dealing with technology and all of that, and it led to some tense moments. So if we think about these things in our environment that cause us to get heated, it could lead then to aggression, and that is a nurture argument. And then we also have Bandura and his social learning theory about modeling. Remember the whole Bobo doll experiment? These kids watched and imitated the adult in the room beat up the Bobo doll, and then they imitated that aggression. So be careful about what you watch on TV and what video games you guys are playing. All right, last but not least, the third A, we are going to talk about interpersonal attraction. And interpersonal attraction is what the little assignment I have for you to do with this lesson concerns. So pay attention if you've been zoning off the rest of the time. All right, there are 3 ingredients to interpersonal attraction. There is proximity, closeness, physical closeness. There's 2, attractiveness, and 3, similarity. And when all those combine, it's a good recipe for being attracted to somebody. So we're going to start with proximity. Proximity is the number one predictor that we will be attracted to somebody. And this could be friendship. It doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. Geographic nearness is the number one most powerful predictor. Are we physically close to somebody? I want you to ask your parents how they met. And I would bet, because your parents are probably a little older than me, this was a time before online dating really kind of took off, that they met because they were close to each other. Maybe they lived in the same town. Maybe they went to the same school. Maybe they attended the same church. Okay, they first met each other because they were near each other. Okay, Mr. Duncan and I met when we were at law school. We were in the same class. So we saw each other every day for a year. We were in all of our classes together. We had geographic proximity. That is how we met. And that is the number one predictor that we will be friends with someone or that we could find this person attractive, is we have to be physically near them. Now, I alluded to online dating. This changes things, right? Because we can meet people, we can stay in touch with people through the internet now. And so that's a whole kind of new dynamic to this traditional thought that you have to be near somebody physically. All right, after we are near them, okay, we have our second ingredient, attractiveness. So attractiveness most affects first impressions. So remember, we're near this person geographically, and then we see a person and we are either attracted or not attracted. That would be step number 2, okay? Our feelings influence who we find attractive. There is a saying, do I love you because you're beautiful, or are you beautiful because I love you? So do not despair if you find yourself lacking in some areas. That doesn't mean you're unattractive. That just means that maybe we haven't found the person that loves us enough to see us how we are, that sort of thing, right? I mean, everybody has somebody else out there. All right, what is attractive? We do know that the average face is the most attractive face. So that would be average size nose, average size eyes, average size lips. Okay, larger distinguishing features are not on that average scale. We also know that face symmetry does play a role. So, you know, you can find like the little line, does one side match the other? That would be face symmetry. So the average face is the most attractive, and if everything is kind of a mirror image of each other, also attractive. All right, the last ingredient is similarity. So remember, proximity brought us into contact. Our appearance made a good first impression, an acceptable first impression. So now what influences whether or not you will become friends or you will become more than friends, that is similarity, okay? Friends and couples are far more likely to share common attitudes, beliefs, and interests, common ages, common religions, common races, common education level, common intelligence levels, common smoking behavior, and common economic status. The more alike people are, the more their liking endures. Similarity breeds happiness, breeds content. All right. So, ask your mom and dad where they met, how they met, and don't forget the little activity. There are 3 types of love we're going to talk about. The first one is passionate love. Passionate love is that aroused, ooey gooey state where you feel the need to be physically in contact with your partner. This is usually present at the beginning of a romantic relationship. It is an intense desire to, smooch and that sort of thing. Again, this is at the beginning and it does fade. It fades. And most of the time, that for young people, when it fades, that's the end of that relationship. And then you move on to another one because that feeling at the beginning, that passionate love, is a good feeling. Passionate love produces children, so it's important, right? But again, it doesn't last. The second type of love we're going to talk about is companionate love. Companionate love is that deep affection you feel for those who you share your life with. So if it is meant to be, if you stick it out, right, you strive for that love of attachment with another person, and you actually start producing a different kind of hormone, and it's called oxytocin. And oxytocin is a happy, feel-good hormone that you have with people that you are in a deep, affectionate relationship with. All right, as love matures, it becomes steadier. And there are two ingredients to this companionate love. There's equity and self-disclosure. Equity basically means what you put in, you get out. So if you're helping out at the house, you're helping out with the kids, you're helping out, pay the bills, that sort of thing, right? You're gonna get that in return. There's a funny little line that goes, I like hugs and I like kisses, but what I really like is help with the dishes. So you just remember that. All right, and then we have self-disclosure. That's another ingredient, the second ingredient of companionate love. Self-disclosure is sharing your life, sharing intimate details, sharing secrets with the person, sharing yourself, your likes, your dislikes, your hopes and your dreams, and your disappointments. So that equity and the self-disclosure combine to help bring you that companionate love. All right, there is a third type of love, and this one was new this year, for me anyway, is consummate love. So consummate love, is in three ingredients. It's like all these different loves, and then you combine them. This is what consummate love means. It's intimacy, it is passion, and it is commitment. So if you have all three of those ingredients, you would be said to have consummate love. The last thing we'll talk about with attraction is we're going to put on our evolutionary hats. So remember, the evolutionary perspective is all about survival of the species. We want to survive and we want to procreate. So with that in mind, who are we going to be attracted to? Well, we're going to be attracted to people who we see as fertile, right? Because we want them to be able to produce children. And so what kind of qualities? Well, in women. So men and women would look for somebody who's young, who's youthful, who has a fertile appearance, and who has a low hip to waist ratio, right? We want some birthing hips on those ladies. All right, and then men, what would women find attractive in men from an evolutionary perspective, putting our evolutionary hat on? They would look for someone who's mature and who's masculine, who's dominant, and who's affluent, because those are the type of men that are going to help create a life that we can be comfortable. They will help us take care of the children. They'll be able to provide for us. And all of those things would mean success in survival of the species and procreating in children. So that is the end. What a way to end. I appreciate all of your time. I hope you enjoyed the last little video, and the end.